Porters and stouts are easily confused these days, but it wasn't always like that. Back in the early 1700s, the lighter-colored, paler ales were starting to catch on in London, and brewers reacted by changing their recipes and strongly hopping their existing brown ales. These new, dark, hoppy beers were aged in barrels for months at a time, but because of the unsanitary conditions of the time, bacteria and a wild yeast known as Brettanomyces got into the brewing vats. These impurities gave the hoppy brown ale a somewhat tart and sour character. Well, the citizenry of London lapped it up, and some accounts recall that the porters who worked unloading ships at the harbor were especially fond of its robust flavor, high calories, and affordable price. Portering is physically demanding work, and the workers got an energizing boost of calories and carbohydrates that would fuel them through the rest of their shift from the beer. In fact, that beer was embraced so completely by the portering community that we can find written accounts going back as early as 1721 referring to the beer as a porter's beer, hence the name. However, there's another theory that contributes to the naming of this slightly soured, dark brown ale. In the Netherlands, there was a beer called a porter that was being made and consumed as far back as the 14th century. Trading links between London and the Netherlands were well established by the 1700s when porters first appeared, so there could be some credibility to this theory. Regardless, porters were certainly associated with the working classes, and the style spread liberally across Europe in association with the Industrial Revolution. Over time, the porter style began to wane in the face of increasing demand for paler ales, so brewers worked to make their products stand out. Stronger and stronger brews were made in the porter style, and these heftier beers became known as stout porters, which was later shortened to just stouts, to indicate their higher gravity and consequently the higher ABV. Arthur Guinness, founder of Guinness Brewery in St. James Gate in 1759, discovered the porter when it made its way to Ireland in 1776, and decided to start brewing his version of a stout porter. It was released in 1778, and by 1783 was the dominant style of beer made by the brewery, outweighing ale production fivefold. On April 22, 1799, Arthur Guinness brewed his last ale and declared the St. James Gate Brewery a porter brewery. And while he did experiment with different types of porters, including the heavily hopped West India Porter, which later became the Guinness Foreign Extra Stout, he continued to make porters exclusively until his death. Unfortunately, taxation in the British Isles tended to be higher for stronger beers, so porters started being produced with lower ABV to remain affordable to the working class that had been championing the style for so long. This led to the association of porter as an old man's drink, despite Guinness currently qualifying as a session stout at 4.2% ABV, and the style started going out of favor throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. However, with the removal of laws banning home brewing in the United States in the 1970s, home brewers began looking at the older styles, and renewed interest in the porter gained momentum. Nowadays, there is very little difference between porters and stouts, and though the BJCP tries to delineate the two, their past is inextricably intertwined, and the differences between the two remain porous to this day.